Well, you did it. You purchased Rise from the Ashes, and I am so happy to be with you in this first module. This is a 3-module course where you'll be learning on your own in 3 different modules, and you will have access to me in different sessions, 3 of them, where we will be applying what you've learned into your everyday life. I guarantee you, you are in for a ride. You're going to learn a lot, and you are going to rise from the ashes. So welcome to the first module of 3 in Rise from the Ashes like a Scorpio. We are going to be working our way from the bottom up. So that means we will be starting in the trenches, in the ashes. In this module, we are going to be learning all things dark, and we are going to learn to embrace the darkness. We are going to be learning all about toxicity, and I will tell you how we are going to apply toxicity, the main component of this course. Obviously, toxicity can show up in all parts of our lives, and I believe that what I teach you in this module, you can apply to all different parts of your life, but we are going to focus on one particular area, and you're going to find out through this module. It is the main reason for Rise from the Ashes, and I'm not going to reveal it quite yet. I think you understand what it is if you purchase this course, but I'm just saying it's going to pay off. So that is kind of a hint as to what we will be focusing on in Rise from the Ashes. So in this particular module, we will be learning about a couple different things related to toxicity. First and foremost, I am going to be teaching you what is toxicity. Okay, so there are a lot of things that are toxic in our life, and there's a lot of definitions of toxicity. But I want to teach you exactly what is toxicity. I also want to teach you the difference between red flags and green flags, because sometimes things come into our life where we are thinking they are toxic and they're not. But in this course, I'm going to be teaching you about the green flags, just the pushes from the universe where it teaches you to work a little bit harder, or I'm going to be talking to you about the red flags. Apologies if I'm a little distracted or I slip up on my words. I am taping this in my apartment in New York City. I live with 4 other people. You can hear the subway in the background, but you know what? It's okay, because this is exactly how life is. When there are things coming down, and when it rains, it pours. And so we have to learn how to deal with all the noise in the background, especially when we're in the ashes part of our life. So if you hear a little bit of noise in the background, or if I get sidetracked, it's okay. I'm going to keep it as real as possible, because that's who I am as a certified astrologist and as an accountability coach. We're also going to learn, how does toxicity show up? What are the signs of toxicity? So that's going to go back to the green flags and the red flags, but we are going to really, really, really hunker down on those red flags. And then finally, in this module, we are going to learn how to negate toxicity. I'm going to be teaching you how to be an advocate for yourself, because no one else will stand up for you. You have to learn how to stand up for yourself. And that is why I'm so damn passionate about this course, Rise from the Ashes. You will see at the end of the module, we are going to be beginning the rise. We are going to be coming out of the dust. It's settled, and we're going to be emerging into new, stronger selves. I guarantee you that. So let's go ahead and begin. We are in the trenches. We are in the dirtiest of dirty places. And I love it that I am doing this course in New York City. It is like the grimiest place you could ever imagine. So if you're looking at the assets that I'm using to sell this course and to bring it into your universe, into your life, it's all in the subway. And that is a huge, huge, huge way of showing you that even in the dirtiest of places, you can still rise. And I'm doing that because I want you to get a feeling of what it's like to be in the dark places. A lot of the time, people shy away from dark places. They don't want to be there, they want to be in the light. And it's really, really important to embrace your dark times. And as a Scorpio, that is a huge thing that all Scorpios embrace. In fact, I'm actually a Scorpio stellium. So that means in astrology, when you look at your natal birth chart, there's actually 4 planets in a row in Scorpio. And so I really feel that energy, and I have felt that energy for so long. I'm 31 years old now. I celebrated my 31st birthday on October 25th, which was actually a new moon solar eclipse. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, probably in module 2, a little bit here. But I'm going to tell you why that it was such an important birthday for me. But let's go back to the toxicity. I'm going to teleport you back to when I was in my lowest of the lows. And you might think, Kenzie, what are you talking about? You just came out with a course. It's not really over, about when your nephew passed away. Wasn't that the lowest of your lows? And yes, it was a very low moment for me and my immediate family. However, I can tell you right now, I've been lower than that. And during those times is when I came up with this passion of Rise from the Ashes. This inner knowing that my darkest times are my most creative times. It's so surreal to be taping this and to look back and to relive some of these moments, because I have rose from the ashes and I'm going to teach you how to do the same thing. So anyway, I'm super excited to get into this. So we are going to talk about what is toxicity. I hope you really enjoy the aesthetic of this course. It's all dark. We're in Scorpio season right now. And yeah, it's time to fucking rise from the ashes. Let's go. So we're going to talk about what is toxicity. I'm going to teach you what it's all about. So when you just do the basic due diligence and you look up toxicity in the dictionary, you see 2 definitions, okay? And the 2 definitions are the following: the quality of being toxic or poisonous. So right there, you're like, okay, toxic, poisonous. Obviously, those are words that, talk about like death of some sort, or just like a lethal situation going on. So when I think of it, it's like there is a death of some sort, and the main reason why I named this, Rise from the Ashes, is actually it's Rise from the Ashes like a Scorpio. And Scorpio is all about death and decay, and it's in the season of death and decay, especially in the Northern Hemisphere. And so when I look at this, it just makes me feel like, okay, like you need to like really realize like we are going to be in this situation where there's a part of you that might die, and it's scary. And being in toxicity and having it in your life 100% is going to scare the shit out of you, and it's going to get you to the point where you're going to be so uncomfortable and you feel like everything's stripped away from you. But when you are that vulnerable, it's very, very easy for people to take advantage of you. But I'm going to teach you how you can totally bypass that. And a lot of the time, you need to be a victim of toxicity in order for you to rise above toxicity. So the second definition in the dictionary says the quality of being very harmful or unpleasant in a very pervasive, insidious way. So when we take the words harmful and unpleasant, it goes back to what I was talking about, how this is a life-threatening maybe situation. Might feel that way. It might not actually be that way, but it might feel that way. And we're going to talk about more of about feeling that way. And unpleasant, like you're going to be totally out of your comfort zone. And like I said in the beginning of this course, it's like people want to like go the opposite direction when they see something dark. I want you to walk into the shadows, and I want you to understand that being afraid can teach you so much. There's a great book that I, read and used for this course, and it's called My Friend Fear. I'm going to keep it in the show notes, as in the course notes on Teachable. You're going to learn a lot on these modules, but I'm also going to be giving you some books and some podcasts and some other things for you to do just to really, really sit in this deep, dark place of toxicity, the ashes. But when we look at this second definition and we see pervasive or insidious, it's like it's starting to really spread and it's starting to really affect you. And insidious is just like evil. And we are going to talk about people being evil and really trying to knock you down. So let's go ahead and move on. So how does toxicity show up? I love this picture, this person in a cave. I feel like the environment of Scorpio is a cave. It's the one sign that is living in the underworld. So while we're in the underworld, we do learn a lot. And we're going to be, shining a light on anything that is toxic. And I kind of want to teach you that toxicity can show up anywhere. In fact, it can be present in a lot of different situations in life. It can be present within the family dynamic, friendships, intimate relationships, and the workforce. And I can tell you right now, I have experienced toxicity in all of these places. And being a human development and family studies, when I was developing this course, I was like, do I want to focus on the family dynamic? Because my minor degree was a psychology sociology degree with an emphasis on the family. So I obviously have some background on that. I am in a big family. I have 2 siblings, 1 half siblings, and a mom and dad, and I have 7 nieces and nephews. Fits being one of them. If you've taken It's Not Really Over, you've heard a lot about fits. In fact, I'm really floored that I'm starting these modules today because the moon is in Leo, and that is his moon sign. So I feel like he's with me right now. But I decided, you know what? I'm not going to focus on the family dynamic. Maybe that will be a podcast episode on Ruby Jade Airwaves. Now, friendships, that has totally been a huge thing that I've had to learn in my 20s about toxicity. Friendships, gosh, I mean, like when I think about it, and going from grade school, Linda Vista, if anybody's listening that went to Linda Vista, go Lightning, to Crestview Middle School, which was just such a fantastic experience, to St. Joseph's Academy, to Mizzou. And within Mizzou, I had Delta Gamma and the MU Career Center. I had so many different friendships. And I'm going to tell you right now, the time that I moved from Columbia to St. Louis to finally New York, I went through so many friends. And looking back, there were a lot of toxic friendships. And luckily, I always knew when to pull the plug on those. And so I was thinking maybe I'll teach people on that. But I said, you know what? I think that that's better like friend advice, and I'm happy to help my clients and Ruby Jade astrotherapy sessions, whether it's astrology or numerology or the alchemy service, to help people with that. But I didn't want it to be the focus of Rise from the Ashes. And then, intimate relationships. This is probably what sparked my curiosity in astrology back in high school, when I had my first real romantic relationship back in high school, and couldn't really understand or get a handle on the person that I was with. So I got into astrology, and later on, I got certified when I was 27, 28, so here in New York. And so I was thinking, I had been through a lot of toxic relationships where I was actually sexually harassed on Mizzou's campus. I was sexually exploited, to be specific. I suffered from a STD that is non-curable, but very, very common. However, has a lot of negative stigma attached to it. And I can tell you right now, that was probably one of the worst experiences in my entire life, where I suffered from a lot of toxic people during that experience, and just being harassed after that, and just really, really being like low, where it was scary. And I talk about that on Ruby Jade Rituals Instagram a little bit, but I decided it's not going to be the focus of this course. I'm still going to talk a lot about that. So what's left is the workforce. And I talk about being a Scorpio stellium, but it actually happens to be in the 10th house, which is the house of career, the house of vocation. And I just realized, after moving to New York specifically for a job and having such a negative experience at that company, and then going headfirst into another company that had pretty much the same problems, maybe even worse, I realized that Rise from the Ashes needs to be about toxicity in the workforce, toxic work environments. And, in the second module, I'm going to go more into astrology, but just so you know, I'm also a Capricorn stellium. So I have 2 stelliums in my chart, one in Scorpio and one in Capricorn. The Scorpio stellium is in the 10th house, the Capricorn house. And the Capricorn stellium is actually in the 1st house. And the house of like the 1st house is the house of Aries, and it's all about being a warrior. And I feel like when I had to deal with toxicity in the workplace, I really had to be a soldier. I really had to like buckle up and try to figure this out, because when we go to work, we are after a paycheck, quite frankly, and living in New York, I needed income. So I know a lot of other people go through experiences like this, like the ones that I had. So in this course, we will be primarily focusing on how toxicity can show up in the workplace. And I'm going to share a lot of personal experiences, and I'm going to hope to God that they're going to like burn a fire inside of you, because if you're experiencing somewhat of what I experience, I can guarantee you it's not worth staying in. And I'm going to teach you more about that as the course goes on. If you hear a little cat meowing in the background, that is my sweet little roommate's cat. I have 2 of them. It's been really great to have animals around as I prepare for this course, because having to go back into these experiences and really feel the hurt that I had to go through and the pain. It's been so comforting to have these cats here. So Doja and Fig, shout out to you, and shout out to my roommates as well for bringing them into my space. So toxicity can occur in real life and virtually. And I really wanted to put a slide on this because it's really, really interesting. And I think the dynamic of just work and how it's turned into both in person and like virtual is that you get a double dose of toxicity in the workplace. So you can have toxic coworkers in person, or they could be kind of attacking you in email. Or you could be on a day off, whether it's a weekend or, the clock struck 5 o'clock and you're off the clock and you're still somehow suffering from this toxic person on your days off or on your time off. Or it could be on Zoom. It could be when you're walking into the office on the elevator, or it can be on Slack. So it's just really important to realize that toxicity can be coming in all shapes, forms, sizes, and that it's really good to be alert to all of that and to realize that, it could come at any different area of the workplace. So, you see water here. Scorpio is a water sign, and hello to my fellow water signs listening, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. Very, very intuitive signs, the intuitive signs of the zodiac. So, just so you realize, a lot of the time, when you have any of that in your chart, you can feel things before they're even really in front of your face. And also a part of that is just that there is, a ripple effect. So like when toxicity is going on and it's not really even happening to you, but if you're an intuitive person, you're going to be feeling that right away, and you might be better at picking up on red flags. If you don't have water in your chart, whether you're an air sign, a fire sign, and an earth sign, might be a little bit more difficult. But in general, just talking outside of astrology, toxicity can sometimes become a ripple effect and affect multiple arenas in your life simultaneously. A lot of the time, when we begin to attract toxicity into our lives, it actually becomes a pattern. And so that's why it is also really, really important to check where you are mentally when you are wanting to begin something new. You actually might bring the same toxic cycle into your life without even realizing it. And I'm going to talk more about this, but sometimes you don't even have a choice, and maybe you're not attracting toxicity. Maybe you fall into toxicity. And sometimes there are interviewers out there when you are looking for a job where you just don't know that they are good at manipulating people, and they've done it many times. So that's another thing that we're going to talk about as well. It's just really, really important to listen to your body and go with your gut when you're in toxic situations. So we're going to go ahead and move on. We are halfway through this module, and I hope so far you can feel that I'm on fire about this course. This is, the second course of 2022 for Ruby Jade Academy, and it's supposed to come after It's Not Really Over, because when someone dies, it's hard. It's a physical death, and you're having to rebirth yourself in some way. And you do need to kind of like, a part of you almost dies. And so the aesthetic with It's Not Really Over, it's a really bright aesthetic. I'm wearing white, and then from Rise with the Ashes, it's dark. I'm wearing black. And so it's meant to pull on the yin and yang of life, and to show that in order to live, there's no light without darkness. So I hope that you've kind of picked up on that. And I hope that you appreciate what I'm trying to put out there. So we're going to keep moving. We're going to keep rolling. We're going to keep rocking. Now we're going to learn about the signs of toxicity. This is when it gets interesting because we are going to be talking about the green flags and the red flags. And I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to be in a toxic work environment 100%, whether it's just like a small situation or like it's full blown, you're going to probably be in one. And then you're going to also be in a work environment that's challenging, and you're going to maybe think that it's toxic, but it's actually just teaching you. Now, when I talked about I had a Capricorn stellium, Capricorn is all about like, you know, leveling up and realizing that it's you know, you have to embrace hard work. Scorpio embraces the hard road, Capricorn embraces the hard work. And so it's just really, really important to understand that there's some things that are going to be hard and there's going to be growing pains in work environments, but not all work environments are toxic. And there are times when, you know, your superiors or your coworkers or, you know, the big wigs in your company, they might really push you and it might feel like, hey, this is like disrespectful. But anytime that someone is pushing you to become a better worker, it's not toxic. So that's just something to kind of think about. And I'm 31. I think I told you that earlier. And so I'm still in my Saturn return. I will be in my Saturn return until Saturn moves out of Aquarius. And my Saturn return started when I first started Ruby Jade Academy. Isn't that kind of cool? And now I'm on my third course, and there's something about the number 3 that I really, really like. And it's just fun because by the end of my Saturn return, all 3 of these courses are going to be live, and you're going to be able to access all 3 of them. So Saturn moves out of Aquarius in March of 2023, and I just feel like I've learned a lot, and Saturn kind of kicks your butt, but don't be afraid of getting your butt kicked every once in a while, as a Capricorn stellium or a Scorpio stellium says, that's in the 10th house of Capricorn. But just, you have to realize when to put your foot down, when to realize that, hey, this style of management is going below the belt, that this is toxic. So we're going to talk about the red flags and the green flags. I love bringing this up. A therapist of mine taught me this, and it's a really good thing to learn. Green flags are things that are good, things that are going to challenge you and to make you better. Red flags are toxic, meaning get the fuck away from this person, situation, place, or thing. So let's learn about the signs of toxicity. So here are the different ways toxicity can show up in the workplace. And look at this picture. You have a pretty rose, which is you, getting burnt. People are burning you. So do you want to live in that situation where you're constantly getting burned and where your beauty is being killed? Or do you want to get out? Because just like we learn in, I don't know, grade school, kindergarten, preschool, stop, drop, and roll. Put that fire out immediately. Don't let the air get to it, because as you let the air get to it, it's going to spread like wildfire. And it's the same mentality you need to have when you're in the workplace. So when toxicity shows up in any of these places, I want you to stop, drop, and roll. And we're going to kind of use that stop, drop, and roll, because when you stop and you drop and you roll, you're focusing on the negative thing, the fire that is on you. And so when you're doing that in the workplace, obviously you're not going to stop, drop, and roll at your desk. Like, you could, and you might get some eyebrows raising at you, but when you stop, drop, and roll, when you have some of these things come up, you're going to focus on the negative and you're going to realize that it is a red flag. So these are the ways: criticism, anger, intimidation, threats, defamation, invasion, bullying, aggression, humiliation, manipulation, offenses, condescension, so like being condescending to someone, unfairness, deprivation, mistreatment, inappropriateness, gaslighting, and that's a huge one, devaluation, exclusion, harassment, abuse, and insults. So all of these are red flags. None of them are green. These are all red flags. That's why I have a rose on the picture. It's red. So I want you to take a picture of this slide, do something with it, because I want you to know the red flags of toxicity, the signs of toxicity. None of these are green flags. I love this quote. It's by Christina J. Daniels, and it says, "A toxic person invites you into the maze of their painful emotions and then traps you there." And this is so true, because most people that are toxic are very, very unhappy with themselves. They clearly don't know how to work effectively without putting people down. And if you are in a manager role or a director role, or you're a vice president or a president to a company and you're doing this to people, you're not a true leader at all. And I ran into many, many of these people working in the corporate world here in New York City. The city that you would think would be the most professional city in the entire world. Well, it's not, because I have many, many experiences to share with you, and that's going to be at the end of the course. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on. Here are common types of workplace toxicity. There's a laundry list here as well, and so I'm going to kind of go through each of them. So we have offensive and inappropriate jokes, passive aggressive comments, consistent criticism, direct insults, harassment, devaluing one's opinion and collaborative settings, undermining work in front of coworkers, gossip, rumors, excluding and ignoring on purpose, withholding information and opportunities, giving unfair deadlines and unattainable tasks, invading one's privacy, interfering with one's personal life, aggressive behavior, threats, physical harm, and then you have sexual assault. So if you can see how from the beginning of this list to the end, it starts to get really severe. And going back to stop, drop, and roll, when we first have fire on ourselves, if we get on the ground and we start rolling and we start, ranting and raving, throwing a fit until that fucking fire is out, we squash it. But if we don't do that, it festers and it becomes bigger. And in this case, it becomes more severe. So it's really, really important, and you will learn this as time goes on, and as you do this course, you will become better at this. But it takes practice. That you will understand that it is so much better to put this stuff out as soon as possible rather than to sit around and wait for something else to be done. Meaning thinking that someone's going to save you. It's not going to happen, especially in the workplace environment, especially if you're working in the corporate world, whether it's a Fortune 500 company or like whatever, has a big name, Good for you. That's great. That is great experience. And some people really thrive in those situations. However, I was not one of them. And because I failed in the corporate world, it made me feel like I wasn't a good worker. Yet I never had problems working until I moved to New York City and worked at these two companies. Never had an issue at any of my other jobs until I started working professionally here. So you just have to realize that, you have to stand up for yourself, and you have to know when to say enough is enough, like stop. So it might start off, meaning like toxicity might start off like very granular, gradually. So like the jokes, the offensive, inappropriate jokes, like might start happening like when you feel like you're still kind of friends with these people. And then like it will turn into like passive aggressiveness and things of that nature. So at times it's going to be really hard to spot, like in this particular um, stage of toxic work environments. Then when it starts becoming more consistent and you're getting criticism all the time, or you're having like direct insults, and then like a little bit of harassment where this person would just like won't get off your back, that's when you start realizing like, okay, this is like starting to really like become bad and like hard to work. And then as it starts to become so obvious and it's in front of other people, it's almost like it's kind of like starting to become a wildfire. I don't know if anybody listening has ever been totally like devalued in front of a group, or undermined in front of like people that you want to like trust, once you want them to trust you because they're a part of your team. It brings you back to like those first bullying days. And it's like so true. There are huge bullies in the workplace, and you have to like realize that bullying doesn't stop in middle school or high school. It continues on into adulthood. And so it's really important to just realize that, there's bullies out there everywhere. Every job that you go to, there is someone there that is hurting and going around with a black cloud over their head and trying to, distribute their pain and their suffering onto other people by being a terrible boss or a terrible coworker. The gossip and the rumors, like I said, it's like kind of like being in middle school again, excluding, ignoring on purpose, and then withholding information. That's when you know, okay, this person is totally affecting my work. And at the end of the day, work translates to money, and it's an income. And so when it's starting to affect your performance, which then is related to your compensation, that's when you get angry. Truly, I think that's when people start to realize, like, no, like, this is not happening. Then giving unfair deadlines and unattainable tasks. I mean, this totally happened to me, and I would try to keep up with, like, the unattainable tasks and the impossible deadlines that I was given, and it drove me to become sick. I, like, would not recommend trying to do that. I mean, if you could just stop it in a way where you say, this is totally impossible, like, what is the priority here? Like, that's a good way of going about it. But I wouldn't say that it's in your best interest to try to do these unfair deadlines. I mean, you can find somebody else that agrees with you that this is totally unfair, and it's in your wise mind to do that. Invading one's privacy. So this is when toxicity is coming into your personal life, and it's interfering like when you are off work. And then you have aggressive behavior where, there's threats involved and there's physical harm. And then I would hope to God you don't experience sexual assault, but I know that does go on in the workplace. And I'm very, very sorry to hear that. And just know that if that's going on, immediately report it to whoever. If you want to get the police involved, you can. I mean, but all in all, these are common types of workplace toxicity. I am so sorry if you're having to deal with this right now. I totally feel you. I totally am there for you. And obviously, in our sessions with this course, you can talk all about this with me, especially in our first session together. I want to know the ins and outs of your workplace environment, how it's toxic. I want you to tell me it all. So let's go ahead and move on. Here are signs that you are being negatively affected by the toxicity at work. So if you feel anxious before work or you feel drained after work, those are two big signs that this is starting to interfere with your personal life. You should not be waking up and feeling like you're going to fucking jail. That's how I felt when I was working in these environments. And when I work with people in Ruby Jade Accountability, which is my coaching service, I am looking for these signs in my clients, and I am trying to pinpoint if they're feeling this way. Because if they're feeling this way, if you're feeling anxious before you clock in, before you get to the place that you work, it is time to leave that place. It is time to do something about this. If you feel drained after work, I'm sorry. You're supposed to be having fun when you're off work. You're not supposed to be like sulking and feeling like shit. So if you feel drained after work, it's not worth it. It's time to move on. If you feel like you want to isolate yourself, which I was totally a victim of, I mean, it was bad. Like, I was in this toxic workplace after I lost my nephew. So I was already isolating myself while I was grieving. And then to be in a toxic work environment and to isolate myself anymore, it was starting to become dangerous, actually. And, it was just a really, really unhealthy time for me. And so I will share more about that in the later part of the course, where I go over some case studies. If your confidence is plummeting, if you start to feel like you are coming out of work every day and you're feeling less like yourself, like your self-esteem is gone, your self-worth, your self-confidence is no longer there, think about like all the advice we get when we're in toxic intimate relationships and your friends and they are toxic friendships, and your like best friend is telling you like look, this relationship is changing you. Like, I don't even know who you are anymore. I don't even recognize you anymore. Your confidence isn't there anymore. If it's plummeting at work, it's the same goddamn thing. Like, work is supposed to be beneficial. You're supposed to get a paycheck. You're supposed to feel like you've completed something, you crossed something off your list. So like, if your confidence is plummeting, it's a huge no. And if your body is suffering, and truly, like, if you're experiencing physical pain, any ailments, you're starting to become sick. I suffered from shingles. There's obviously something wrong with this situation, and you're being negatively affected by the toxicity at work. So here are some reminders, because when you suffer from a toxic work environment, it feels like you are drowning. You cannot, for the life of you, swim. And it's like you need someone to throw you a life vest type of thing. So toxicity is typically a reflection of the infiltrator, the person inflicting the pain. It's not the victim's fault, and you shouldn't feel bad. You are a victim of toxicity. You are not the infiltrator. The person that is doing that and manipulating you and being toxic should feel bad. But a lot of the time, they don't. Unfortunately not, they don't, because they have no self-awareness. Also, you need to remind yourself that you're not alone. 1 in 5 people have experienced toxicity at some point in their lives. And like I said in the beginning of this module, you are going to go through a toxic work environment at least once in your lifetime or in a previous lifetime. This is not a dead end either. There are ways out, and you need to continue to look for the light at the end of the tunnel. So just remember, like I talked about, from going "it's not really over" to "rise from the ashes," there is no light without dark. There is no dark without light. We need to balance out the yin and the yang. The hard times teach us, the hard times make us who we are today. And so we need to totally, totally find that spark in the dark. And you will. You will. Going throughout this course, I promise you, you're going to see how it is when you begin to rise. You're going to feel the rise. Now, we have completed 3 sections out of 4, and so we are on the 4th section of this module, the ashes. And it's all about how to negate toxicity. So this is a big section that you want to stick around for. Now, hopefully I've been keeping your attention, and if so, please let me know. Send me a direct message, because you're my people and I'm going to give you something special. However, if you needed to take a break, pause, go do something else, that's totally fine. That's the beauty of this course. It's a self-paced course, so you can do it however it works with your schedule. So anyway, after this section, we are actually going to be going into case studies, so you definitely want to hang out afterwards. All right, let's get into it. So these are action steps into how to negate toxicity. So like I said, there are going to be some other things that I want you to do in this module before we move on to the next module. We're obviously going to meet, we're going to talk about your toxic work environment, your experience specifically, but there's also this wonderful YouTube video that I want you to watch with another woman that created a whole company called Bullyology, and it's all about toxic work environments. She's dedicated her life's work to helping people understand like the signs of toxicity in the workplace. So that's going to be a part of this module. There's also going to be a great podcast that I want you to listen to. It's by Dr. Heidi, and so you're going to find all of that stuff in the notes of this particular module. So the action steps to negate toxicity are the following. You want to be an upstander, and you will understand what that means if you watch that YouTube video, not a bystander. You want to begin to document and take notes on all interactions. You want to create an audit trail of emails or performance reviews. You want to report toxicity to your superiors, human resources, people practices, and the like. You want to limit the interactions or have strength in numbers, and you want to leave and aspire for something better. So you really will understand that, when it gets so bad and it becomes a wildfire, you have to document. There was a thing that we used to say when I used to audit, and it was CYA, and it stands for cover your ass, and it relates to this particular situation. Take notes, take screenshots, take pictures, export your emails to PDF, save your performance reviews. If there's a particular moment where it's not virtual and it's in person, the toxicity is in person, write your experience down in a journal. And when it becomes a wildfire and you've already kind of understood, or you've totally started to understand that it's just getting worse and worse, report it to your superiors. Start small, start within your team. If nothing gets solved within your team, go to the next part, the level, the chain of command, go to the next person on the totem pole, whether that's human resources or if it's called people practices or the like. And a lot of the time people are like, oh, when you go to HR, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Well, when it gets so effing bad, like, you really don't have a choice. And it's really important, if you want to get out of this in a professional way, to do the things that you're told that you're supposed to do. And a lot of the time people don't use HR, but there's a lot of things that you can get when you go and report it. There might be like an EPA. Is it called EPA? Employment Assistance. EAP, sorry, EAP. There might be an EAP, which is an employment assistance program, where you could have access to counseling, therapy sessions that are totally free because they're paid by the company. And that was the case for me. That really helped in some of my situations. And I think it's important to just go. And sometimes you'll be pleasantly surprised. There'll be HR people that are really willing to help you and willing to listen, and they actually do something about it. Sometimes you won't have to go to HR and you'll have superiors that will look out for you. But all in all, sometimes you just gotta bite the bullet and do it. And it's important when you go into those offices, or you've built up the courage to finally say something, to kind of know what you're gonna say, and that you're not just gonna go in there and complain. You also want to limit the interactions you have with this toxic person. Obviously, you're working with them, so it's going to be a little bit difficult, but having strength in numbers is like the top thing to do. If you have coworkers that are also seeing that this person is toxic, it's really good to have those people around, especially when they start doing some of the things that they're doing, whether that's, totally yelling at you in the middle of a meeting. It's good. You have different eyes, different people watching, and that can help your case. And then sometimes you just have to leave and aspire for something better, and that is what we are going to talk about next. So let's pull back the curtain on some of my experiences in the corporate world. My first experience in toxic work environments actually happened here in New York City. Like I said, I had worked many other jobs. I started working when I was 16, and I always had some really great bosses working in the part-time job world in the service industry and on Mizzou's campus, and internships. And so it was like totally eye-opening when I came here to start my career and to like have toxic work environments in all places of here. So this is case study number 1. These are my performance reviews from one of my old jobs that I drew a lot of inspiration for this course and this module in particular. So let's go ahead and start. So these are old performance reviews from the first company I worked at in New York City. The company, I'm not going to hide the company from you. I'm going to tell you that it's KPMG. If you go on Glassdoor or Indeed or whatever, there's a lot of negative reviews on this place. So I'm not the only person that would label it a toxic work environment. And obviously there were times where it wasn't toxic, but there were so many times that it was, that I would label it a toxic work environment. This was the first time I was confronted with a toxic work environment ever. In the past, I had worked in positive work environments where people respected one another, and I wanted the group to succeed. KPMG was supposedly a high-performance culture, but what I found was an extremely competitive culture that turned into a very toxic company to work for. So, to rewind back a little bit, I went to school at Mizzou, and I was, a journalism major at one point, undecided, marketing, finance, and then I decided to be an accounting major. And so I went through the accountancy program at Mizzou, and it's a 150-hour program where you get a combined bachelor's and master's degree, and it sets you up in taking the CPA, which is becoming a certified public accountant. That's a test that is kind of on the same scale as the bar. It's a little bit actually tougher because it's 4 parts, and like no one really passes on the first part, and unless you're like a brainiac, and it's really difficult to pass the CPA. So when you work at KPMG, you're awarded right off the bat if you do pass the CPA, and that was obviously not the case for me. So that kind of put me at a late start compared to the other people starting off as an audit associate with a CPA. So that already set me apart from people, and it kind of was like an experience where it was like, oh, you don't have your CPA, oh, okay. And so like it was like you were judged right away if you didn't have your CPA. And so it kind of divided the group. It was people that had passed their CPA and people that didn't, and you kind of just were right off the bat labeled like a bad auditor if you didn't have your CPA. So now you know kind of like my background and how I got into KPMG. It is funny because my parents were really right about it not being a good fit for me. And I remember the first day as an audit associate, like being a full-time employee at KPMG, I knew that it was not a good fit for me, and I called my parents, but it was like day 2, and so it was kind of hard to leave. And I've been brought up where you don't leave a job until you have something lined up. So it was my first real job, like full-time job, being on salary. So I stayed in it, but I should have just gone with my gut feeling, but I just didn't have the confidence that I do now. And so this all was meant to happen to me because that's why I'm making this course. So let's go back to the performance reviews. If there's one thing to point out in this first performance review of mine, it is the quote made by my direct report at the time, which was a senior associate. So I was an associate and he was a senior associate, and then the level above that was manager, and then it was senior manager, and then partner. So yeah, this person really wasn't that high up, but he was my direct report. And he said, if you can't read it, he said, I encourage Kenzie to keep a positive attitude throughout the engagement, to be receptive of the feedback she is provided, and to not become defensive of the constructive criticism, especially during busy season when patient often runs thin. Now I'm going to stop right there. If you don't know what busy season is in auditing, it's when a company files a year end. An auditor's responsibility is to go over the financial statements before they report to the SEC. No, it's not the football conference that Mizzou is now in. It's actually the Securities Exchange Commission, and it's what is like the thing before the stock market. So it's like an important thing. It goes back to, God, I can't think of the name, but like the big scandal with the accounting firms totally blowing up the value of a particular company. It's called Enron, if you know anything about that. So there is like a huge ethical thing when you are an auditor, and so busy season is really the time that auditors have to kind of make sure all the work that they have been doing throughout the end of the year is correct before it goes to reporting. So it is a tight turnaround. It is impossible deadlines, and I should have just realized then that it was a toxic work environment, because to have employees work until 3 o'clock in the morning is just like absurd. So the guy is saying here that, she better, as in me, like better just realize that, patience is about to run thin. So this comment was a red flag for a couple reasons. My first performance review at KPMG was actually conducted by me. I asked for feedback in person. My senior associate and his colleague, who was also a senior associate, did not say anything negative about me. But once it was put on paper, the sentiment changed completely. It did a whole 180. And when I saw this, I did get defensive because it was a prime example of gaslighting. This is the first time I've ever been gaslighted at work. And this report was tied directly to my compensation, promotions, and future engagement opportunities. And like I said, I was kind of already labeled as a bad auditor because I hadn't gotten my CPA. So to have this happen to me on my first engagement as a first time employee, I mean, like, I was pissed. They sabotaged my career at KPMG 100%. It rippled into my career. It was a ripple effect. And then the second thing why I feel like this comment is a red flag is they fully blown admit in the report that their patient levels are going to run thin. Okay, like, they're basically just saying, like, watch out, Kenzie, like, I might say something that's totally inappropriate. And that during busy season, it was going to get a lot worse. And I remember that, like, when I first had my first, like, gaslighting experience on this team, there was this colleague of my senior associate, and wow, she was probably one of the worst people I've ever worked with. And I've worked with a lot of people because KPMG is an engagement type of work. So I had many managers, many other senior associates, many partners, many other, like, superiors. And boy, was she probably one of the worst. I probably worked with, like, hundreds of people at that job, and she was one of the worst. But she told me after this one situation that was totally, like, ridiculous, and I will reveal it soon. She goes, you better buckle up because it's going to get a lot harder and it's going to get a lot tougher. And she was meaning, like, this was right before busy season, and I was just like, I remember she was standing over me and she was saying this, and I was just like, who the fuck does she think she is? But I just should have gone with my gut and left then. But like I said, I didn't know how to do that. And so that is why I'm making this course. I want to teach people how to do that. I don't want people to live like me and have to experience, like, what I experience. So I love this quote. It's by Tracy Malone, and it says, gaslighting is an attempt to change the truth. And that's exactly what it is. So in total, I had 3 performance reviews on this particular engagement. Among all 3 reviews, there were 28 pages written about me. In total, 28 pages. I had been on this engagement while I was an intern, so before I accepted a full-time offer at KPMG, I actually interned with them, and I interned with them during busy season because I wanted to see how bad it actually would be. And it was actually a very pleasant experience. I worked on this exact same engagement. It was Sirius XM radio, and the audit was done well because everybody did their job. It's a group effort. It's not a one-person show. Everybody has to do their work well for this impossible deadline to be met. It's impossible for a reason. So if one or 2 or 3 or the whole group just, like, drops the ball, it's not going to be met. And there's going to be placeholders in the audit, which is not good. And it totally goes against the ethical part of being an auditor. But yeah, I mean, there was 28 pages, and to think that we are in busy season and you have time to write 28 pages on someone that just started is a huge red flag. I mean, I had been on this engagement while I was an intern. It was a different team, obviously. I got a positive review as an intern. That resulted in me being hired full-time as an associate. This was obviously another red flag. Anyone that can take that much time out of their workday to prove a case like this and to write 28 pages is clearly trying to take the spotlight off of them. They're clearly not doing their job either. So obviously I'm not going to have you read, like, my full performance reviews, but I just kind of want to copy and paste and put it on these slides to show that, like, how much was being written on me. But Kenzie needed a refresher and was often difficult to work with due to her lack of understanding. Like I said, I had just started. And it was like month 3. I feel like when you first start a job, especially it's in the corporate world and you're like learning new skills and you learning how to do the job, the first 6 months are really difficult. And it's kind of like a grace period where other people are supposed to be helping you out. But I remember when I was learning on that particular engagement, this senior associate that wrote this was like, yeah, you don't have the intern shield anymore, do ya? Okay, red flag. So to counter his remarks, I advocated for myself because in the end, no one else will. And you know, in the beginning of the course, I was going on about like the family dynamic and friendships and intimate relationships and how toxicity can show up in those areas of life. And that had obviously happened to me. So I had experience like dealing with toxic people. So I was like, this isn't my first rodeo. Like, I know you are totally trying to just like change the truth and alter it in a way where you make me look bad, and you're trying to act like you're doing nothing wrong. Like, so I started to advocate for myself, and in the end, no one else will. So I was very, very detailed in my responses on my review to make sure I painted a picture of exactly what was going on in the audit room. And I also reiterated the company's values within the mission statement, which was something that I learned at one of my positive working experiences at the MU Career Center, where when you write a cover letter, you want to go over the mission statement and you kind of want to play to that in the cover letter when you're explaining how you would be a good fit for that company. So I said, at the end of the day, KPMG's products are its people. When people at the firm have a feeling of discomfort, it is best to voice it rather than keep it left unsaid. So really, like, they did really harp on the fact that KPMG was different than the other big four accounting firms because of its people. And so when I was like being gaslit, I was like, well, this is totally going against with what the recruiters like totally sold me on when they sold me KPMG. So, I used that, and then I also used, my truth. And like this little box here says, your truth is fierce. And being a Capricorn stellium in the house of Aries, I've learned to really embrace my fierceness and like just realize that it's a part of being a warrior and a fighter in life, and you do need to fight for yourself, especially if you're in a toxic work environment. At times, we were staying until 3 a.m. This is what I'm putting in my review. There were many times that my coworkers made me feel like I was unable to perform well. I'm glad I was able to overcome these hard feelings they projected on me. Maybe it was due to our deadline. However, I would not make a new employee feel this way, especially during his or her first busy season as an associate. Overall, this engagement was a very good learning experience. So I kept it real, but I didn't go below the belt. I always made sure I was professional in my responses on my review. As you can see, I took time to write back because I was not going to let this person totally paint a picture that was totally false about me. So I keep going. Within 13 days on the engagement, I was told that I ghost ticked on the quarter review, yet my senior associate never gave me the chance to review or learn from my mistake. That is very true. When you make a mistake, you should be able to learn from it, especially when you're at work, because it would be counterproductive if you made the same mistake over. I thought it was very, very strange and extremely suspicious that they wouldn't let me see this mistake that I made. And it was like just a huge indication that they were trying to make up just false narratives about me to just scare me away or get me fired. It was one of the two. This was another red flag. They withheld information, and we go back to that slide in the PowerPoint that like withholding information is actually a form of toxic like a toxic work environment. It's toxicity. As we transition into the interim, so for instance, when you get into a busy season, there are obviously other parts of a financial report. You have the different quarters, and so there's this interim phase before busy season. And so there were times that the other associates were taking notes on me instead of using the time to teach me new skills that could help me during busy season. And so I'm putting that in my report as well. What is comforting is the fact that the truth will always reveal itself. In some way or form, you just have to be patient. And that is exactly what occurred for me. The truth will always, always, always prevail. So what was actually part of this review, it was like a 3-person review. So it was me, my senior associate that was talking negative about me, and his direct report, which was the manager. And so she says in the report, tension between team members were brought to my attention, tension between team members were brought to my attention throughout the course of the audit. This was an issue and did not help Kenzie's progress. So going back to the slide about negating toxicity, I did report it to her. She was not HR, she was not people practices. She was my superior, and I let her know that, things were getting really heated in the audit room and that I was experiencing, toxicity. These are then the reviews that I received on other engagements following my time on the SiriusXM engagement team as an audit associate. So the remarks went from being very negative to positive, highlighting that there was one bad apple, one bad experience at KPMG, and it was actually fueled by this senior associate on my first job as a full-time hire. Like I said, I'm not going to have you read all of these things, but if you can just point out like some of the words like positive, great, boost, morale, enjoyed, hope, good, positive, showed up, made herself available, lighthearted, she got along, positive, readily available, help, enjoyable, well. So I didn't realize like how toxic this work environment was. Like I knew it was toxic when I was living it, but then when I got on other engagements, I really understood that like it was bad. So this is another great quote. It's from Karen Salmonson. You never fully see how toxic someone is until you breathe fresh air. So we're going to move on to case study number 2. And this is actually my other experience in New York City, and it's all about exit interviews and emails. So it's actually at the very end of this experience before I, said sayonara to the corporate world. So this next case study is about my experience at my second toxic work environment in New York City. After I quit KPMG, 2 weeks later, I got a full-time offer at Madison Square Garden in a completely different sector of business. So I was working in accounting and I moved into marketing, and I got that job through transferable skills. I'm going to teach you about that in module 3 of the course. So I thought the grass was going to be greener at MSG, but that was not the case, and I fell exactly into the same trap. And remember how I said that toxicity can show up in different areas of life at the same time? Well, here is an example of that. I was interviewing with MSG while I was working at KPMG. I was totally blindsided by the red flags at MSG because I was still breathing the toxic air at KPMG. And I'm going to share a little quick story before we go into the, details and the troughs of this experience. I was interviewing a lot when I was at KPMG because, like I said, I knew I didn't like this experience on day 2 of the job. I had a terrible experience my first engagement. I mean, I wanted to get out of there big time. So I was going and interviewing everywhere, and I had a lot of different interviews. And in fact, um, I learned a lot interviewing at different companies, and I would really recommend that to other people doing this course or trying to find a new job in general. Because I look back and I realized that there were some companies that were so toxic, just like MSG, that I probably would have gone into and had the exact same experience. I remember I was interviewing with this like one company, and I don't even really know what I was gonna do there, which is a huge red flag. Um, but I remember the person like being negative about my hometown St. Louis, and I remember just being like really caught off guard about that, but not really like realizing until years later that that was like I dodged a bullet there. But unfortunately, I was still working at KPMG. I was using my EAP, my employee assistance program, to to talk to somebody about how negative it was, and that woman challenged me to quit KPMG even when I didn't have anything lined up. So I was at the very tail end of my interviews with two companies, and I quit without having an offer. And 2 weeks after I quit, I got an offer at KPMG, and I worked 2.5 years there. Worked amazing events, and like the job itself was super glamorous and super cool, and like a once in a lifetime opportunity, and like I'm so grateful for that. But it was just the people that I was working with were made it so terrible. And so I worked through the pandemic and eventually, parted ways. And so this is actually a screenshot of one of the emails that I sent out when I left and had my final day at MSG. And it says, "As you may know, today is my last day on my 2-year journey at MSG. I worked tirelessly day in and day out to make a positive impact at this company. Unfortunately, you all never wanted to give credit where it was due. You may have thought I was given this role and took it for granted. However, I loved working here and worked hard because of that passion. It may have been challenging to work alongside you, but with every challenge comes a lesson. I will take these challenges and lessons I've learned from you on my next endeavor. Now that I'm laid off, I have no problem escalating some of the issues I found concerning with you to the right individuals." Now, that is a cliffhanger, isn't it? So, I love this quote, and we're going to use it to transition into what I'm going to tell you next. So, letting go doesn't mean giving up, but rather accepting that there are things that cannot be. So, having Capricorn in my chart, I do believe that it's really hard for me to like just give up. And I know that about myself, and I think Scorpio kind of doubles down on that. So, I was let go of MSG because of the pandemic. And I don't think I would have ever left or let go on my own. I would have never done it. At that point, my toxicity tolerance was very high. I had gone through a toxic work environment already, and I was kind of like addicted to fighting it off, weirdly enough. There was definitely an obsession to kind of like prove myself with these people, but I didn't ever once, while I was in this like war, realize like what it was doing to me mentally and physically, and how it was like really, really like it was like a cancer in my life. So you being let go, and because of COVID, it was like the best thing that I got from the universe. It was a big push, because letting go can sometimes be really hard. And I talk a lot about that, and It's Not Really Over, like how a death is like about letting go. And like this was a death, this was a psychological death for me. This was a death of like the toxic work environments I had gone through. So yeah. So looking back on the time that I had there, I'm kind of like zooming out when I find out that I'm laid off. I was one of like 400 or 600 people that day, and there was like a sense of relief that totally washed over me, but also I was like kind of, upset because I looked back and I had some of the most unprofessional and toxic work experiences at this company. Just some of the things that I could probably write a book about and it would become like a bestseller because it was just so weird. It was so weird. So I didn't really I did have an exit interview, but I didn't really have enough time to go into everything I wanted to go into because it was huge. It was like a huge thing that was bottled up inside me. I didn't really share like all the details. So it was kind of like overwhelming to like feel like all those emotions. And this is another great quote. It's like arsenic, toxic people will slowly kill you. They kill your positive spirit and play with your mind and emotions, and the only cure is to let them go. So I wanted to kind of let it go and like kind of just let it rip and share my experiences with some of these people. And like it started like from the moment I got there to from like onboarding all the way to the end. And so yeah, I really made sure that I talked about certain people and certain experiences. And so I started off this email about being like really sitting in the realization that the biggest takeaway during my time at MSG was how to not act as a manager of people. So, like I said, as much I was relieved that I got laid off, I was pissed. Rightfully so. I had been bullied in the position for over 2 years. I had trained countless of managers while I never received a promotion or recognition in my role. When I got let go, I was still helping out the team. I actually had to ask them to stop reaching out to me because I was no longer on the team and that I had lost my job. There was no like thank you or we're so sad that you're leaving in my team. It was just like really, really gave me a bad taste in my mouth, but it just gave me every more information to like just kind of like let loose on these people and kind of tell the true story. I'd kept quiet for so long, like it was finally time to kind of just let the floodgates open and just kind of be real. So I decided to write a lengthy email and send it to a couple different people that had a lot of pull in the company. And I was very detailed in this email. So I thought about my experiences with a couple different people, and I really honed in on about 3 people that gave me a lot of trouble during my time there. And one of them was actually terminated while I was there, but the other 2 survived the massive layoffs and they still had their job. And so I was kind of, pissed that I was one of those people that got let go and they still had the opportunity to be a leader in this company. So I was very specific and I talked about how, one of these people, from the very beginning to the very end, she was on me like a tick. I mean, she was so toxic from the day that I walked into that office to the day that I sent that email. And, she was really adamant about spreading rumors and gossip about me. This particular team was so toxic, like many people quit. So that was a huge red flag, obviously. And each time a new manager came in, I was the one training them. And she called a meeting with one of my managers on the first week to talk about me, to talk about how to keep her eye on me because I didn't do my work. But also, that was a time when me and this woman were actually working together and getting along, and we were cleaning up what one of my other infiltrators of a toxic work environment was doing. Then I'll talk a little bit about him, but he was spending recklessly in the company. He was in charge of the budget. He had paid a bill 3 times. Ultimately, I caught the mistake, and she kind of helped me get it credited back. So I couldn't believe that, like, she was going behind my back and doing that when we were finally getting along. And this manager, like, only worked at the job for 4 months, finally left because she just couldn't deal with working with this woman. There were actually 4 highly talented women that worked on my team that left because of the toxic work environment that she created. And when you think about the price of people leaving and having to go and find new team members, I mean, it's expensive, and it really, really never set our team up for success. We were always trying to fill the gaps. That's why nothing could get done, because it was just like this cancer that she had created. Now, she worked under somebody that was obviously very toxic, but a little bit more passive. He was very high up, and he called a meeting with the entire floor that I was about to work on before I even got there, and let the whole team know that, I would be coming in and working and sitting on this floor and to watch what they say and do, because I had a relation to the owner of the company. And I later found this out through a girl that became my friend who left the company, and she was included in that meeting, and she told me this before her departure. And so when I found this out, the experiences that I had with the woman superior totally made sense. She was working under someone that was very toxic. And there's a beautiful saying that I remember that I learned in my business school at Mizzou, and it's called tone at the top. And if a toxic work environment's happening, a lot of the time it's trickling down from the top. So anyway, more people that had a lot of leadership and a lot of pull were being very toxic to me. My director, who was terminated in that role, was saying really strange things like, "You're an easy target," when the door was closed in his office. He was, when I finally admitted to my team that my nephew was going to pass away, his response to me was, "I think that that's the best thing that could happen." So, I mean, this guy was literally a jackass, quite frankly, and I don't have any problem saying that, because I was not the only person experiencing his wrath. But the sad thing is he was working under somebody that totally knew that he was doing that to all of us, and he kind of let it go on, and he wasn't a good leader. He could have stopped it, and the only time he stopped it was when it started to be revealed that, maybe he was doing the same thing. Because what happened was, this particular person that was saying all these things like, "You're an easy target," was going to him, and so he believed that the way to try to scare me off was to have weekly meetings with me to go over all my mistakes that I had made that particular week. So this person is a senior vice president. He's probably making $500,000, $250,000 per year, and he has time on his schedule to set a meeting with me. And I believe it was maybe an hour that was blocked off. We used maybe 30 minutes each time, but even 30 minutes, I mean, you could never schedule a meeting with this guy, by the way. Like, he was MIA, very, very difficult to track down, but somehow he carved time out to go over all the mistakes that I made. as a coordinator. And just so you can kind of put everything into perspective, I was a coordinator. So the level below me was an intern. And he was a senior vice president. So he was very close to the CEO of the company. And there were times where I didn't make any mistakes. So those meetings were very cricket because there was nothing to go over. And they used that time to intimidate me, but there were times where they couldn't intimidate me. So they would start to talk about really, really inappropriate things. And this is the director at the time and the senior vice president. They would talk about like recreational drug use, and I would just be sitting there. And it was just like really weird, a weird dynamic. I mean, it's a young woman in her 20s and two men that are in their 40s. It has like bad news bears written all over it. So after sending, my email, I did think about the times that I did, go to HR and try to raise the red flag and try to get help. And it was just so clear that everybody was in on the same thing. I mean, I remember going to HR because when Fitz finally passed away, I wanted to use my bereavement days and they were denied by my director. And I was like, I just at that point had zero patience for him because some of the things that he was saying to me, that I just was like, you know what? I'm going to take this up with HR. If you're not going to, what's the word? Like accept these days or like honor these days, I'll go to HR. I'll take it up with them. So I went to HR. I can't remember this lady's name. I mean, it's not memorable, obviously. And I remember saying, it's really important for me to take these bereavement days because it's really hard for me to like get out of bed. And she was like, well, the company policy says, bereavement is for people that are in your family. And I kind of looked at her like being like, what the F are you talking about? Like, you're saying the exact same thing as this director. You know that Fitz is my nephew, so I'm very confused right now. So I said that to her, and she was like, well, yeah, like if Fitz was like your parent or your sibling, like, or your spouse, like we could honor those days, but like the fact that he's not, one of those people in your family, like we can't. And I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck is going on? Like, this is a death of a baby, and I'm telling you that I'm really suffering in the grieving process. I'm very lost to the grieving process. And if you're curious about that, I open up and it's not really over, but I was like, I need these days off. I need to be able to use the bereavement days that I'm allotted to use this. So I started to get kind of horsey with her and say, I just want to let you know that when I did let my director know that my nephew passed away, his response was, I think that that's the best thing that could happen. And the look on her face was like that she had seen a ghost. And she was like, well, I mean, like, if you, like, can't get to work and, like, if you can't get out of bed, like, we can't get you to work. And, like, she was kind of talking, she was just, like, digging herself a deeper hole, like, and she was, like, pointing to the fact that, like, it's not okay. It's, basically, she was, like, in my opinion, if she was saying, like, it's not okay to be not okay. And it's totally goes against the culture that's evolving right now, where it is okay to not be okay. And so it's just kind of wild that there was just so many people that were in on this, trying to make my experience miserable. But there were people that I did really vibe with, and there were people that really were there for me and stood up for me, and I wanted to thank them when I got let off. And I also wanted to go out in true Kenzie Dolan fashion, where I explained my case and stood up for myself, because when you stand up for yourself, you also stand up for those who wish they did. And so I wanted to have the last word and address the elephant in the room. So this is my more positive email. And I say, MSG fam, today is the ending of my 2-year journey at MSG. I'm very proud of my accomplishments here, and I want to thank a small group of people. I really hope I included everyone I meant to, kind of blanking a bit because we haven't seen you all in so long. Outside my main team, who were kind to me during my time in and out of the office. Being a Dolan and working at MSG comes with challenges as much as it comes with blessings. You all gave me a chance and allowed me to excel in my role. With some of you, I created personal relations with and hope to stay close in the future. I appreciate all these times I had with you individually and collectively very much. If you ever do come in contact with another Dolan at MSG, please remember your time with me and welcome that individual with an open heart and mind as well. Like my relative said a couple months back, MSG is a family, and it's essential to be kind, especially during a time like this. Best of luck to you, and as Tupac raps, keep your head up. So I have worked in the entertainment industry of the company, so I went to a lot of different concerts, so I liked that I used Tupac there, but yes, I wanted to address the elephant in the room. I was related to the owner of the company. I had the exact same name. So maybe that's what my director meant when he said I have a target or I'm an easy target. But yeah, it was hard to work there being related to the owner. And I don't know if any of you have had that experience where you have relation to the owner of the company that you're working for. But there is a discrimination that can happen when you are related to the owner. And I had known other family members that had worked at MSG and that didn't like the experience. And I'm not really sure if they stood up for themselves. I think that they just left. So it was really important for me to kind of pave the road for any other family members that were going to maybe try to embark on this experience. And I don't know, I felt like I had really developed a relationship with my family member, and it was a positive one. And so I also wanted to stand up for him because there were so many people that were so judgmental towards him while I worked there and so rude that I just felt kind of I felt kind of bad for them. And so before I move to the next slide, I do want to share this one other story about just being a Dolan and working at Madison Square Garden. I started to become friends with people because I was able to do that. I mean, I'm able to relate to people very easily. And so when I made some friends on the floor, it was really nice. And I remember there was this one girl that was actually going to marry into the Dolan family, and she obviously had a different name before she got married. And once she got married, she took the last name Dolan, and so her email changed. And one time we were in the bathroom, and it was just the two of us, and she asked me if she could ask me something specific about the last name Dolan and how it was to be a Dolan working at MSG, and I was all open ears. And she said, yeah, ever since I've taken that name and I've changed my email, I notice how people are different towards me, and it's just so negative now. And I was like, yep, that's exactly how I feel. Welcome to my world. It just is the way it is, and I'm sorry that you're going through that. But like I said, it is a form of discrimination. You being the way that you are, being negative to people just because they're related to somebody in the company is toxic. And there's no excuse for it. So sending out this email was kind of a closure for me. I was pleasantly surprised with how my farewell email was received among the people that I became friends with. I got the most positive feedback I had ever received while working there. It was huge closure. I mean, if you look, I'm not going to have you read everything, but it was a pleasure. You were so cheerful. I'm so lucky. Best of luck in the future. Going off the quote, even when the road is hard, never give up. I really appreciate your enthusiasm, your passion. I'm so sad. I was in constant awe of your work ethic, energies, and hours. Wishing you all the best. I mean, just like, it was so nice. Like, I remember someone actually texted me and was like, that was I've worked at MSG for 8 years, and that was like the best farewell email I've ever received. So, until you let go of all the toxic people in your life, you will never be able to grow into your fullest potential. Let them go so you can grow. And we are going to end on that note. And I cannot wait to see you in Module 2 of the course. You are going to see a pattern of what I've named each of these modules. But just remember, you don't have to live in the ashes. All right, I'll see you in the next module. Love you all.